good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 6th, 2022 CEP Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting. Luke, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Here.
Planning Commission Chair Sharf.
Here.
Everyone's present. All right, thank you, Luke. Next, we move on to item 1, approval of the minutes. The subject is to approve the May 16th CEP special meeting minutes. We'll take a moment to look those over. Do I have a motion to approve the May 16th CEP Strategic Advisory Committee special minutes? Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah. I have
It should say Vice Mayor.
yeah. So why does it say Vice Chair? Yeah. So I have a comment on. Thank you for capturing the feedback of the committee, but I remember that I specifically mentioned something that it's a request I made at the council meeting before, and I made the request again in that meeting that I would like presentation of all housing element to include existing performance of our current housing element. It's to point out the fact that we selected 5 housing element sites, and 5 projects are approved on those sites, and about 1,000 units allocation, but we approved 3,500 units, although only about 350 are built. The reason that we should include that is there has been a miscommunication campaign against Cupertino, and then I think we should use this opportunity to provide these facts to our residents. And I looked at when in 2014, when the staff did presentation, it also started with facts about current performance. When they talk about AFFH, for example, they also talk about current strategies that has been successful in addressing fair housing issues. So I think it's fair for the city in public meetings to provide positive facts about the city. Thank you. But these are not captured in the minutes. So I remember I said those. So do they have to be in a form of motion in order to be included?
I think that might be a question either for Chris or for Luke. I'm wondering if page 2 of the minutes, if you're trying to make an addition, we have several bullet points listed. It could be captured under the item where it says web page updates to include timeline and informational facts for housing element update. I think it actually is more distinctive than that.
Maybe it was a misunderstanding that what I said was meant for web page, but what I said was meant for community meetings. But to that fact, actually, when I watched the 2014 video, at that time, when they did the presentation, they always start with, here are the past meetings we already had. And then at the end of presentation would be a list of future meetings, a timeline of the project. So that gives picture where we are what we have done and what's coming. So that's good to have. And I didn't mention that in that previous meeting because I watched the video after. So, but I did remember I want facts about housing element to be included in the presentation of community.
Okay.
meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I see Chris has his hand raised. Chris.
Yeah. So so I think at this point, if the Vice Mayor wishes to make a motion to amend the minutes, I think that's that's where we are in the agenda. So I would I
Okay.
think that's what would be on the table now.
Okay, so it could be potentially to amend the minutes to include a status update on the housing element. Could that be a brief way to capture that?
Right, to reflect what was discussed in the prior meeting, correct?
Okay. So then I make a motion to amend the draft. I think it doesn't need to be bring back, right? We can just amend
Correct.
the fourth bullet point to reflect what, so amend the fourth bullet point to say the presentation at the community meetings should include timeline and information, facts for existing for the current housing element, not the housing element update, because that means the new one we are working on.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. And then I do need to go to members of the public to see if there's any hands raised on this item. And I do not see any. Okay, so closing public comment, and we're going to bring it back for a vote. Luke, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Yes, Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Housing Commission Chair Parrish,
Aye.
Planning Commission Chair Scharf.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. I do see the attorney has his hand raised. Chris, is there a procedural issue?
There is not. I will take my hand down now. No
Okay,
mistake.
thank you. Thank you. All right. Planning Commission Chair Scharf, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I'd like to commend the staff for actually preparing the minutes for this meeting. And hopefully they can do the same for planning commission meetings in the future.
All right. Thank you, Planning Commission Chair Scharf. Next, we move on to postponements. We have none. Oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter within the jurisdiction of the committee and not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. In most cases, state law will prohibit the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. And I go to the public. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to make any comments for oral communications? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we've completed oral communications. Next, we move on to our new business, item 2. The subject is a report from staff and EMC planning group regarding the proposed community engagement and affirmatively furthering fair housing plans for the housing element update process. And Luke, do we have a report?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Moore. I just will be brief. This is the 5th meeting of the advisory committee. We last met on May 16th, so 3 weeks ago. On May 23, I think as most of you know, there was a community meeting held at Community Hall. So that was 2 weeks ago. That kind of kicked off the 3 focus groups we're planning on having. And that will be the focus of the presentation today that Andy and Kylie will be discussing. We'll be summarizing that meeting, the attendance, what was learned, laying out what we see as the upcoming meetings for focus groups, and also summarizing the work that has been done to date on community engagement and AFFH-based outreach. So hopefully we're going to touch on all of those things and move along briefly. With that said, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Andy, and he and Kylie will be jointly walking you through, again, like I said, the summary of the May 23 meeting and upcoming focus groups. So with that said, Andy.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Chair and committee. We've got a brief presentation just to walk through those items that Luke just mentioned. Let's see. As soon as my mouse cooperates. see. Not sure. There. So our agenda today, we're just going to do a quick overview for the committee meeting and just a reminder of our committee and our committee's goals and our engagement plan update for next steps. We'll look again at the approach and timeline, ask for committee feedback, and open to public comments. So just as a reminder, our legislation that we are being responsive to is the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which means to take meaningful actions in addition to combating discrimination that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics. We're focused on outreach, that aspect of AFFH. We'll also be discussing AFFH with the Planning Commission at our upcoming meeting this month in our next steps with selecting sites. And our welcome and overview, just a reminder that this committee was formed to provide guidance on plans for public outreach and community engagement strategies for the housing element, specifically inclusive of AFFH. So now we're going to move on to talk about some of the feedback we received from our May 23rd community meeting. And I'm going to ask Kylie to join me in sharing some of these early draft results that were shared also as an attachment to the agenda packet today. Kylie?
Yes, thank you, Andy. So first, I just want to say about the report, I wanted to make sure I got something to y'all before this meeting, but I'm sure you saw like the draft watermark on it and everything. So it is a draft, and I haven't been able to watch the recording and get some really good quotes from the panelists that I'll include, and then to look through the notes from the moderators to add more about the community input, but we were able to get the survey results together, and so I can go over those. So this was the opening poll. It was, have you ever experienced housing related challenges such as housing insecurity, trouble paying rent, eviction, and homelessness? And so you'll see on Zoom, just over half said no, and 35% said yes. And in person, a little less than half said no, and 45% said yes.
And Kylie, I didn't bring forward the numbers. Can you share the attendance numbers, both at Zoom and in person?
So that was a problem with the poll. It is why it's percent wise, but we do have the attendance numbers. So on Zoom, there were 71 attendees total, and at any given time, it was about 50 or 60. And then in person, there were 20 people in total who came through. And that was kind of come and go more than Zoom was, I think. And so there were probably 15 people there in total at the height. And thank you to Councilmember Moore for attending in person. It was great to see you. Next question, what is one thing that you will do to get involved with the Cupertino housing element? And so we had some different options, and the goal with this question was to have people at least kind of commit to doing something, because the goal of this community meeting wasn't just to get this one-time engagement, it's to have continued engagement in the housing element. So there was attend a planning commission or city council meeting, use the tools on the housing element website, attend a housing element community meeting, speak with at least 3 friends or neighbors about the housing element, speak about the housing element at a public meeting, or all of the above. And here are the responses to that. So on Zoom, 20% said all of the above, which was awesome. And then 27% wanted to attend a planning commission meeting. 13% would use the tools on the housing element website. 27% would attend a housing element community meeting. And 13% would speak with at least 3 friends or neighbors about the housing element. And then in person, 50% said all of the above, which is awesome. There's a lot of different things on there. And 12.5% wanted to use the tools on the website. 25% wanted to attend a housing element meeting. And 12.5% wanted to speak with at least 3 friends or neighbors about the housing element. Did you learn new information or learn something about housing from a new perspective? So 80% said yes, which I was really happy to see after the meeting. And then 10% said maybe, which is, you know, that's, I guess, okay. And only 10% said no. So that was good. And this one and the next ones are from the exit survey. And so the Zoom and in person are compiled. And then here are some of the qualitative feedback that we received. So we asked people to share what feelings they had during this meeting. And these are just some of the quotes. There will be included in the appendix, all of the quotes that we got from the exit survey. But someone said empathy for the homeless people who shared their stories. I really liked this one. Someone said, I've been very quiet about local civics in the last 2 years, and this is definitely activating me again. I want to build an equitable and accessible community. So someone who had kind of stopped engaging, who will be some more. Someone said, I was not familiar with the experiences of the unhoused and low income seeking housing in Cupertino. While I felt that my housing situation was unideal growing up, I didn't think about the more dire situations others can face. So lived experience of the panelists really having that kind of impact on someone. And someone said, I was surprised how the panelists' stories haven't really been a part of the housing conversations I'm part of. We definitely need to make it easier for people of all backgrounds to share their stories, particularly BMR residents, low-income residents, renters, and disabled people. Has something shifted or changed in your understanding of local impacts of the housing element? So 50% said yes. I know Andy and I found it humorous that 35% said maybe. So they're not sure. Maybe something shifted. They're still thinking about it. And 15% said no. And then we asked them to share details about how this experience has changed their understanding of local impacts of the current housing crisis. Someone said, I was surprised at how many folks are here and fired up about accessible housing in a city like Cupertino. I had honestly felt like Cupertino is a lost cause in ever becoming an accessible city. And it's good to see there's a spirit to change things. And so I like that they feel like they want to get more involved, maybe because other community members are getting involved, which was why we really tried to have good turnout for this meeting and everything. Someone said, a reminder that we rely on people in our community to do low-income jobs. They have just as much right to live here as those who have sufficient income. I know this is something that we'll be focusing on more as we go forward with our community engagement, is accessing those people who work here but aren't able to afford to live here. Someone said, yes, just in the sense that needs were dire, but the panelists drove home the point that the pains of the housing crisis are not shared equitably, and the difficulties of finding housing are regressive, in that they disproportionately impact those of lower incomes or disadvantaged backgrounds. And the last one is, we need to center the experiences and needs of those most impacted by the housing crisis, which is exactly why West Valley is here doing this with y'all.
Thank you, Kylie. And a lot of these quotes and comprehension of the need, these are things that are going to fold back into our housing element, particularly as we begin talking about policies. And being able to connect the dots on community growth and this understanding of need is something that HCD really values and can also better inform some innovative solutions through policy. And they want to see some new ideas that are coming out of the specific situation and the specific needs in a community. So
yeah, and I'm excited to be able to demonstrate actual specific things that community members said and not just numbers. I think that that'll go a long way. So then we asked if people, this goes along with what Andy just said about policies. It says, do you have any ideas or strategies about addressing the conditions some of the panelists face or have faced? So someone said, we need to work together on this issue. Another person said, build more housing, especially middle housing that isn't just single family homes. Rent ceilings, financial support for new homeowners, ending application fees and credit checks. Another attendee said, waiver of application fees by the city and BMR units, removal of parking requirements, height restrictions, and any other municipal policies affecting the unit economics that make more affordable housing projects feasible, advocacy for a rental registry, and work regionally by the city in streamlining the application processes and varied assistance programs offered to lower income individuals. And so the reason why I included more quotes for this one and then also long ones like that is to demonstrate that there's a lot of policy ideas that were thrown out there, which I think is going to be really interesting to look at. And there's a lot more too that I wasn't able to fit in here. Someone else said, I'd be curious if we could have more communal conversations with people with lived experience, as most folks don't have access that they know of to have these discussions. Central database of opportunities, trauma-informed practices through the process. And that is definitely something that West Valley is going to be here to do. And yeah, I think that really honestly hit it on the nose. Someone said, I wish we had a program to screen applicants for housing and match them with older folks who are sitting on too big a home. Maybe renters could offer assistance to defray their rent. So that's kind of a creative one. I think that could give us some ideas. Someone said, create a common housing application with fee waivers and policy that prioritizes affordable housing over luxury housing. And then just a couple more. Housing Commission should have a required tenant perspective, and we need to make affordable housing actually scalable, which means upzoning and rezoning.
And as we move through these, it will be a digestion and incorporation into the discussion. I want to be clear that just because ideas are shared through these meetings, it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to become policy mandates by any means. I do want to also bring up, Kylie, if you could just talk through a little bit what trauma-informed practices mean, just so that everybody can understand.
Yeah, so a lot of what that means is working with someone in a way where, like when we bring lived experience people forward like this, making sure that we're not just making them share their trauma, we're not exploiting them, we're caring for them and allowing people to share in the way that they want to. And I think it, especially just in the world of serving clients and stuff, means working with people in a way where you respect them equally, where you remember that there is trauma associated with whatever you're serving them or whatever they've been through. And I think it's taking a lot of care when you're working with someone.
Thank you, Kylie. Appreciate that description. And thank you for sharing all of those amazing initial results. And we look forward to receiving the full report and then folding that into our processes going forward.
Absolutely.
And I want to keep you close by as we talk about some of the things that we'll be talking about as our next steps, our next 2 community meetings coming up. So just a reminder, our inclusive outreach, what we heard from the committee early on, and I want to move through quickly, make sure there's plenty of time for community feedback today as well. So this is a list you've seen before. It's just a reminder of those who we're hoping to reach out to. And so this was the first of our meetings together with WVCS partnering. And our second meeting, we're looking to focus on De Anza students and older adults as a combined panel. And we're very excited about this. We've been receiving a lot of comments from De Anza students, and very well informed and activated and wanting to be a part of the discussion, and we want to welcome that. And we also have considered this idea of relating students' needs with older adult needs, because then we can have sort of a cross-pollination and understand where there's some places where that overlaps, and there's some places where there's just an opportunity to listen deeply and understand those needs from both sides of at least the age spectrum. And for the third meeting, right now, we're wanting to make sure that we don't miss out on bringing into the fold those who are maybe house wealthy, so that their wealth is maybe very much tied to their home, but it doesn't mean that it's not a struggle for them. So we've heard through committee members that that this is an important group of folks to bring into this discussion. So we do want to ask the committee members to think about who you might know that would fit into this sort of umbrella, and that if you know of anyone who would like to share as a panelist or as a breakout room participant, we would really love to hear from you. And that goes for the public as well. And so there's an ability to communicate with us directly through our website, or Luke, I believe the email address through the city that gets brought to your mailbox is that the housing@cupertino.org?
Yes, that would be fine. Yep.
Great, great. And yes. The other group we want to make sure maybe gets involved and included with that meeting number 3 is those who are of service to the community, those who work in the service industry who would like to be living in Cupertino. We definitely want to make sure to include them in these discussions. So we're open to ideas about how that third meeting might come together, and we'll make sure that there's enough time in this meeting to discuss that. Ongoing also, WVCS's outreach with the faith-based community, and we can give an update on that. I don't know if you want to talk about that right now, Kylie, or if that's something that we'll just be open to questions for at the end.
I could talk about it briefly and then we could have questions for it.
Great.
So yeah, for faith community outreach, West Valley has a list of all of the faith groups in the West Valley, including all of the ones in Cupertino. And faith groups are one of the very few ways where we might be able to get extremely low income housing, because it's very, very hard to make that happen. And then also just an opportunity to get some housing built by non-formal developers in the city to get free land and stuff like that. And so the goal is to bring faith leaders together to have a conversation with one another about housing, what it could look like. And also we'll have a couple of faith groups who have successfully built housing there to talk with them and answer questions. And since not everyone can build on their land, we'll also incorporate into the conversation how to serve the community and how they can get involved in the housing element process in different ways. Yeah, do you want me to talk about anything outside of the faith community outreach right now, Andy?
Let's see. The next thing that you and I are working on together, and it's very, very early budding of this piece of it. We have all of our pieces coming together, but I just want to give everybody a sneak peek of this idea that we'll be bringing in videos that include clients of WVCS and having them share their experiences. And then we will have a survey that pairs with that so that we can understand the community's response to learning about these experiences. And it would be videos that are less than 3 minutes long. So it's this idea that hopefully it's something that's very compelling and useful and accommodating to everybody's very busy schedules these days.
Yeah, it's kind of a mini opportunity for the meeting that we had on the 23rd for people to hear from folks with lived experience and to gather their reactions. So we're going to be working on that. There will be 3 different videos. And like Andy said, they'll be under 3 minutes each. And Andy's team is working on a survey that will capture people's responses in, I think, kind of a different way. And we're going to make it as easy as possible, because I know we've had trouble getting engagement with things like the balancing act, largely because of everyone's busy schedules.
And that's also, it's a very complicated map. It can be, but we are evolving that to have a much more simplified mapping piece. So we're hoping that participation with the Balancing Act going forward is something that will be easier and more compelling for people to dip in and share their ideas and comments. And then just a reminder, we're reaching out to as many groups as we can. And on that point, and we'll mention this a little bit later, and it was in the memo, but there's this idea of a meeting in a box. That's our terminology for what we heard committee member Chow bring up as an idea, that leadership or residents within the community, that you can also become ambassadors for sharing information about the housing element process and eliciting public comments and sharing that with us so we can fold it into our process. We're also looking to do an open house, and that would just be sort of an informal time for people to come to a public location. We've had success at a public park for other communities that we've hosted this open house idea, and we often have maybe 3 members from our team show up each with our own expertise, whether it's maybe a little more focused on the urban design or zoning strategy concept. And then also we would have somebody available who would focus on equity. And then I'm just sort of the all-purpose project manager. So together we'll be ready and informed to answer and to listen to questions and comments that people would have, and in that informal way of just having a conversation. We're also, of course, open to outreach suggestions from the committee. And some of the things we've heard is distributing flyers. I believe that was done for this last committee meeting community meeting, and we'll be sure to do that again. There's been discussion about placing banners at prominent public locations. There were a few ideas that we've brought back to you. We haven't heard any confirmation about where banners would be most effective and for what portion of our process that you would like to see those banners. But we're open to hearing more about that and having that evolve. We are coming into the period of time in these next few months where we'll want to be eliciting as much community feedback as possible. So we would be right on time for some banners if we put that together in these next couple of weeks. We're also working with staff members from across the board there at the city. And as far as outreach, this is just a quick recap of some of the outreach that has come to pass to this point. We've mailed out postcards. We've sent out letters of interest to over 400 property owners and attended advisory committees and block leaders meeting. I believe, Luke, you led that, and I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, no, Andy, yeah, I attended that, and I believe there'll be another one coming up soon. So we are going to regularly have a housing element discussion at the block leaders meeting. Also, as you see there on April 23, we had a table and we're at the Earth and Arbor Day event. Not that everybody was interested in talking about the housing element at that event, but we made the effort. We probably talked to, I don't know, 40, 50 people about different issues going on in community development, and mostly tried to encourage their participation in the housing element and let them know about the Engage website. So, and then obviously your last bullet, the community meeting. So yeah, we're going to continue to look for opportunities to get out in the community.
Great, thank you. And the city's been great about pushing out through social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor. We appreciate all of the work that communications team has led with that. Again, we would love to talk about meeting in a box concept so that we can prepare materials that would be meaningful and helpful for you to be ambassadors to this process. And we have some specific outreach planned for Project Sentinel and Parents Helping Parents. So we are looking forward to all of what we'll be incorporating with our process. So again, just we're hearing you that you want us to get loud, campaign for the next steps, and we're happy to do that. I can say that in other communities that we're working with, also there's just a lot of engagement burnout, not only with the housing element, but just in general, so that we get it. It's tough for people to think of getting engaged with such a big project as the housing element and all of the emotions that stirs. But we're trying to make it accessible and inviting from all different modes. So any kind of sensorial way of learning that people have, we're wanting to invite them and incorporate their ideas going forward. So just a reminder about this collaboration process. We look forward to hearing more from the committee and understanding how we can collaborate to just improve our process as much as possible going forward. And we appreciate all of your good ideas and you working together with us to make it a better process. Just quickly with the scheduling, we're working on our drafts for all of the different sections of the housing element, and we're working towards getting to that 30-day public review prior to getting it to the HCD. So a big step in that direction will be bringing our sites to council from the Planning Commission. We're hopeful that that can happen later this month on June 28th. For anyone listening, if you'd like to join us, please do. There'll be ample time for public comment, and we'll be discussing sites with tools that are user-friendly and interactive, both through mapping and through an ability for everyone to get your comments in writing on our website. So stay tuned. We're going to be sending out a lot of announcements for when we have those updates to the website ready to go, for everybody to just tap into the website and share your comments about each unique site if you like, or just maybe one particular site or the sites overall. So we welcome all of those ideas. So today we'd like to know if there are any individuals, groups, or representatives that the committee would like to include, particularly with community meeting number 3. That's our big question to you today. But as I mentioned, we are open to your questions and feedback generally. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you so much, Andy and Kylie, and also Luke for the presentation and information. I'm going to go first to members of the public. I see a couple of members of the public with their hands raised, and then we'll bring it back to the committee for further discussion. So first we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa. And thank you, staff, for setting up the timer. That's very helpful. Okay. So we're waiting for Lisa to unmute. Welcome, Lisa.
I needed the unmute. The clock came first. So thank you for the presentation. Lots of good things. And I'm glad we're getting ready to start, quote unquote, advertising this. I'm kind of sorry it hasn't happened sooner, more publicly, but we move forward. I was very pleased that in the comments there was the house rich. I know that I brought that up in chambers the night of the meeting, and I'm hoping that there were other people that did so as well, and so that there's some interest in really getting feedback from that type of situation, and the ability to find people who are willing to give that feedback would be amazing. And I would maybe add to that for meeting number 3, or where it's somewhere along the line. There should be 4 families living, if it really finished up, and I'm hoping it did. Habitat for Humanity, they're on Clio Avenue. There were to be 4 homes built. My gosh, they should have been built 10 years ago. And it would, in my opinion, be good to get the input from people who were able to participate in Habitat for Humanity and purchase those homes at a lower cost with all the requirements that go along with it, and actually check in and see how things are going. And maybe just talk to Habitat for Humanity and find out how many people actually applied for those homes. You know, something. And it may hopefully not be too far back in the future that that information is not available. And I had some other things, but I'm sorry, I'm doing a work meeting at the same time, so I missed a few things. But I will stay tuned in, and I will raise my hand later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Next we have Siobhani.
Hi, thank you, Councilmember Moore and everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, could we please have the timer restarted?
Thank you for that consideration, Councilmember Moore. And thank you for the presentation. My name is Siobhani Kovaluru. I'm a longtime resident of Cupertino. I grew up in a lot of the schools here, graduated from Lynbrook High, and I have a couple questions, and I'll try to make it fast. First, I wanted to know about the recordings from previous meetings, which aren't on the website. I was trying to find the one from the 23rd, and it wasn't there, and I couldn't see a couple other ones. So that's, my first question. And then the second question is, I'm curious about the status of the revised site inventory. So while I am in Cupertino again right now, I used to be a resident for the past 2 years in Sunnyvale. And they are, one of the cities that already have their draft element. And I just have, this frightening concern about our timeline. And I was really hoping for some more clarity and transparency on that front. Obviously, I appreciate the housing element discussions that we're having. I was there at the meeting where the data was taken. And I think it's great dialogue to have, but just to, follow suit of our sister cities and to keep the foot on the gas, so to speak. I know that I, as a resident and longtime voter of Cupertino, would really love to get more clarity into this process, especially of the timeline and just transparency into the plan. Just because I know that there's other folks like me who, really believe that housing is a human right. And I think we all believe that here today. And I just want to make sure that we see that traction match, the words and values that I'm sure we all believe. It's not too radical to say everyone deserves safe housing, but I know that takes some momentum. And I was just wondering if the council could provide some clarity on some of the questions that I provided. And thank you once again for having the feedback and the time to listen.
Thank you, Siobhani. And I think hopefully we'll be able to get some answers for you. Next, we have Govind. So I'm letting staff do the muting and unmuting so we don't double up and end up muting someone. So we're waiting for Govind.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Govind.
Thank you, committee and chair. And I think I just want to sum what my set of issues that I'm kind of struggling to understand. One is that is not yet clear. So I would request we have more visibility into the timeline, which is currently we only know the milestone schedules as well as there was a slide on timeline collaboration. I think we definitely need some calendar over there in terms of calendar dates. Second is that I think it is understandable. We also need to know what is the status of the progress that we have made. So things like revised sites inventory. Where do we stand in terms of the outreach? What is missing? That information is also currently not easy to perceive based on my attendance in these meetings. The thing which definitely is about the outreach burnout. I think the issue is that there should be a method to communicate how people's participation actually helping for us to complete whatever we have in terms of our outreach, and that would encourage them to come and participate. So that's another point. The other thing is that in terms of outreach, housing providers are a very important segment. I mean, people, especially affordable housing builders and providers. So I think we definitely want to get some more visibility there. Maybe have a session with the Housing Commission as well. The another point is that we written it down here. Yeah, finally, I think I definitely want to congratulate the team There were very significant takeaways from the public engagements that have happened in terms of the statistics, the number of people who attended on Zoom as well as in person during the last meeting. So I think I definitely congratulate them for doing that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, if I have some more points, I'll bring it up when it's appropriate. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Govind. Next, we have Kalisha. We'll wait a moment for Kalisha to unmute.
Thank you. My name is Kalisha Webster. I'm Senior Housing Advocate at Housing Choices. We are a service provider funded by the San Andreas Regional Center to help people with developmental and other disabilities find and retain affordable housing. I just wanted to call in to, really thank the consultant for coming up with this great community engagement plan. We think there's a lot of really great ideas here. I was able to attend the meeting on May 23rd. I thought that was a really great way to get the community engaged and understanding of different perspectives of people with low income and other abilities and their housing needs. One thing that I really wanted to highlight was the plans for collecting community member stories through videos. This is something that Housing Choices has actually been working on as well in neighboring communities as part of the 21 Elements in San Mateo County. And we're also on what's called the Equity Advisory group. And so we've been collecting stories from our clients. So we think this is a really great way to get people engaged who maybe can't attend meetings in person or online for whatever reason they're not able to engage. Could be abilities, could be, just time. So we think this is a great way to get people involved in the housing element process. And we would recommend maybe opening this up to more members of the community rather than just the West Valley Center's, just their clients, having something on the housing element webpage where people can submit their experiences, their housing stories for engagement in the housing element. And like I was saying, in San Mateo County, they have the Equity Advisory Group, which is a group of many different organizations who serve residents of low income and different abilities and farm workers and all these different special needs populations. So really would advise the city to reach out to other organizations. While we do see that, West Valley does have a very intersectional, diverse group of people that they serve, there are other great organizations that the city should be working with on this to get more stories involved in the housing element process. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kalisha, and thank you for that information about San Mateo County. And right now, I don't see any other members of the public with their hands raised. So we're going to bring it back to the committee members, and I see the Vice Mayor has patiently had her hand raised. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's the same request I've made before. Maybe it should be captured in a minute. Please include calendar time in the timeline, because I think the public doesn't know what 90 days then, what does that mean? At least include a month of the year. That way the public has more idea. I think I made the same request at the council and then in this committee a few times. Please capture that in the minute. And I think I mentioned in the last meeting also that if we only outreach to the West Valley Community Service client, we have a big gap in who we outreach to, because people of middle or any kind of income, even high income, could be discriminated for different characteristics that's mentioned in the Federal Fair Housing and California Fair Housing law. So we need to outreach to other organizations. So what's the plan? I talked to San Jose planner, and they said that they utilized their outreach from the Federal Fair Housing 2020-25 consolidated plan when they contracted with the county. My understanding is Cupertino also contracted with the county. So they utilized those outreach comment and plan, and then extended the contract with the company who did those outreach. That was done by the Lawyers Committee of Civil Rights, and they are specialized in fair housing outreach. So I wonder what's our plan for that. And then also that I mentioned this a few times too, 2021 housing survey the city has done. I and John Whaley pushed for that. I think more than 800 people took the survey. Have we outreach to those people? I didn't see that mentioned here. So will that result or comments from that be included in the housing element? I hope to get an answer. Then finally, also I think, thank you for, I think I really like the presentation today. Thank you so much that I wish this week was March when we have so many different ideas. But unfortunately, it's already June. So I think kid in a box ambassadors are great. What's the implementation timeline? I think we need that to have an idea whether we can do that and start recruiting people. I think this would be an ideal way to outreach to the ANZA students. However, since we have only 3 community meetings, I wish these community meetings could focus on more like people who provide services for Cupertino, cleaners, gardeners, employee unions of the public agencies, and the caretakers of seniors and teen of young children. These people, I think, are important people we need to outreach to. I don't see their presence in our outreach. And another thing that to have a low cost and low effort outreach is survey, not just West Valley clients. And I talked to San Mateo, and they said they have 2 versions of our survey. One is general housing element survey for everyone, and one is a fair housing survey. That's also done by every city to everyone, every agency, not just one agency. So I think survey is another low-cost way that we can reach out to organizations, get their members to fill out these surveys. And then I think it's important that we remember what's the direction from the council for this committee, because I think we kind of forgot that along the way. So I'm sharing the screen here. So this is the direction from the council that it's not it's basically it's from the minute of the March 8th council meeting, and this committee is supposed to create a community engagement plan. And after 2 months, we don't seem to still have a plan. I think we should have a plan and then have an idea of what we have implemented in the plan, what's upcoming in the plan. And every meeting we would have a draft plan that we can keep adding and revising. That would, I think, give the community and the committee better idea of where we are, what we have done, and who we have outreach to. And this meeting specifically has this table of the groups that we need to outreach to for our legal requirement. The left column is a list of protected characteristics who could get discriminated in fair housing. And on the right column is a list of characteristics under the California fair housing law that we want to outreach to. So my question then is, for the first community meeting, we had, I think, probably 50 attendees. I think the panels was great. They each shared their individual lived experience, but that's one person. We have 50 or more attendees. I don't know whether they fall in any of these characteristics. It would be great to know. Maybe in future meetings, we need to collect this kind of thing from our attendees so that we know these comments are from people who has these categories that we legally are required to outreach to. So yeah, that's for now. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I was wondering if staff could do answers that we had questions from the public also, and some of the questions from the Vice Mayor before we move on and don't have a chance to get to them. So do we have some members of staff that would like to? I see Andy's unmuted. Thank you, Andy.
Well, we certainly welcome working with Housing Choices and Kalisha Webster. So please, let's connect soon and work together with how we can incorporate some of your ideas and some of your experiences, and potentially also share what we can learn about the videos and how we can move forward with that product. So that's great. I do want to mention, as far as the engagement plan, that really was included in the body of the memo. We are attempting to work through this as a collaborative process, and so that this strategic advisory committee can contribute to the formation of the plan as we move forward, so that it is reflective of both what HCD is requiring, but also of your own experiences and guidance. So thank you for all of what you're supporting and incorporating and contributing. And I think I heard Vice Mayor Chow that there is an interest in the meeting in a box. And as far as implementation, we can start moving on that immediately. And I would say within the next 2 weeks, we can at least have some initial materials for you to share with the community as you may choose to do so, including a way for easy note taking. So we'll exercise those drafts, and as soon as they're ready, we'll try them with you and see what you think, and build on what your response to that might be.
And let me
I
just,
How about surveys? Could we do
Oh,
a
this-
survey?
surveys, yes, we can certainly have surveys related to our, we can have that survey was only intended to be an initial survey. So we will be launching additional surveys through our website, and we'll be sharing QR codes for that.
Could we review the surveys before you launch them? I believe multiple cities have launched surveys, so so are we going to do 2 types of survey, a general housing element and the AFH one, or are we just doing one version?
Well, that's something we'll be working with staff to create. Pew, I saw you unmute. Would you like to contribute?
Yes, I just wanted to say that yes, we will probably work with EMC to come up with those surveys, and we'll probably do those online through the Engage Cupertino website. We're happy to do those surveys. Surveys, as you know, have to be unbiased, and they do have to have certain characteristics in order for them to qualify as good survey questions. And I know that Andy has people on staff that can help us craft those questions. And, so we will be happy to, and that is always part of the intention of outreaching with the community at large as well. So we'll be happy to do that.
Right, could the committee review the survey before you?
At this point, I don't believe so, no. At least we, as staff, we don't intend to bring the survey questions to the committee. However, we will be happy to work with, we've had the survey questions from the past, from the housing survey subcommittee, for the questions that the subcommittee was interested in asking. So we do have some guidance from, interested members. But in terms of the survey, it is designed to be for input in the housing element itself. So at this point, I don't believe we're bringing the questions back to the subcommittee.
Thank you.
So that's within the scope, I think. That's within the scope of this committee, right?
So the scope of the committee is to give policy direction on the implementation of engagement. And so I think, so there is the opportunity to give direction here. I think it would be concerning from both a timing standpoint and also potentially from a content standpoint, because as Pew alluded to, there are certain standards that these questions have to be, survey questions have to meet to be considered valid. And so I think there have been past meetings and this meetings are opportunity to give policy direction, but I don't think it would be appropriate or useful for the committee to review the survey.
I think it's because I've seen there were some city surveys earlier that a lot of times staff think it's neutral, but the residents will have very strong reaction thinking that it's not neutral at all. And so I think we can help provide perspective so that it will be neutral. Because a lot of times if you only look at things from one side, you think it's neutral, but when you include other perspective, then you really can try to make it more neutral. Then we can collect better input rather than influenced by unknown bias. So yeah, another thing I asked is 2021 housing survey. Do we have those 800? Or perhaps we don't have their address, their email, I don't know. But I think I brought this up a few times. I never got an answer. So, and will the result be included in the housing element?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I see Andy and Pew both have your hands raised. So I'll go to Andy first.
Just briefly, I wanted to invite you, Vice Mayor Chow. I hear that you have mentioned that you've seen other surveys. If you wanted to provide links to those, and we can incorporate consideration for, questions that you might like to see included in our process.
I don't know then, because they are all closed. Like I think Sunnyvale, Mountain View have one. They are all closed. San Mateo Collaborative said they have a simple survey for general and the AFFH. They said that not every city did the general survey, but every city did the AFFH, so they can collect county-wide data. And they said that they should not be talking to me. They will provide that to staff. So I already gave the staff that contact. Staff can easily get simple survey from other staff.
We do work closely with Baird and Driscoll, so that's something we have available to us as a reference. Right. So thank you.
So will the result of the 2021 survey, I think I don't need to ask this is the third time in this meeting, right?
If you're talking about the housing survey, I hope you do see that that's on our resources page on our website prominently.
I think my question is about more than 800 people took that survey. And I have mentioned that we should outreach to those 800 people. I have not gotten an answer. Did we outreach to them?
So we are
not have a way method of outreach to them. I don't know.
We at this point we have about 1,600 emails 1,600 email addresses that we're sending out emails to. My understanding is that those 800 emails are probably part of those 600, but we are confirming that. To have 1,600 emails otherwise would be quite almost unnatural. But I do believe those 800 are part of it. But we will confirm and get back to you.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice.
The result of the survey will be included. And then another question I had is, we cannot just rely on WVCS clients, although they are essential to this process. And we should include the groups that we outreach to in the past fair housing assessment and the other groups who provide service projects decentralized, just one of them. There are many other groups. So what's the plan to outreach to them? I do not see that in the plan.
Would staff like
to have a written plan so I can see? Maybe it's already there.
Okay. Would staff like to respond to that?
Luke, I believe, had unmuted himself. I'll let him answer.
Yeah, thank you. I think in the presentation today, one of the things that's covered is we're not just talking to WVCS clients. So this week we're going to be meeting with Project Sentinel. We're going to be talking to Parents Helping Parents. We're planning an open house where we would be talking to residents and the general public. I think the upcoming focus group meetings, as Andy alluded to, are focusing on students and seniors more generally. So they're not all WVCS clients. I think we realize WVCS reaches and interacts with a segment of the population that's really important in terms of AFFH-based outreach, but we're not solely relying on their client base to make up our AFFH-based outreach. I think also if there are other groups that the committee has in mind, we'd be happy to hear again if there's somebody we're missing. I know in previous meetings, we've talked about county sheriff, fire department, service workers, all of those groups, whatever the priority is. I think our goal is to try to spend the next couple of months getting the outreach ramped up and getting it done so we can then proceed to getting the draft housing element done. So anything that we can hear today that you think we're missing, we'd be happy to hear.
Okay.
But again, we're not solely relying on WVCS and our
That's
client
true.
base.
However, besides WVCS, Project Sentinel are just one group I, by accident, came over. I happened to talk to them, but they are just one of the group of many the Cupertino included in our fair housing assessment that we report every 5 years, and we have an annual plan that says how we are they are providing services for fair housing purposes. These other groups are not included. I don't know what are they, because I think staff knows. So I'm relying on staff to tell us, here is a list of other things who also provide services similar to Project Sentinel and WVCS, and especially the ones that provide those at the county level, because as a high resource region, we need to reach out beyond Cupertino, right? That's AFH's requirement. So I see that San Jose contract with county and utilize the past fair housing assessment, and especially consultant who has done that before. And now we contracted with WCS who hasn't done it before. Fine. Then we still should find out what other things Cupertino did for CDBG grant, which was meant for the federal level fair housing. Just, I need the staff to provide us information of the list of groups, not just the ones the committee happens to mention, because we don't have that full knowledge.
Okay.
Understand my concern that we need the staff to help us, give us a longer list, because there are many other agencies who provide various kinds of services in Cupertino and beyond.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. And do we have a response from staff on that? And I want to express a little bit of concern that I have with the table that the Vice Mayor provided. And it talked about the federal protected classes and characteristics, and then the California protected classes and characteristics. So under the federal, you had race, ethnicity, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. And then under California, I'm going to read it real fast, all federally protected classes. Interesting. Gender, gender identity and gender expression, sexual orientation, marital status, medical conditions, military and veteran status, age for people over 40, genetic information, ancestry, and source of income. So interestingly, when I read this, it says all federally protected classes. So they've already wrapped in all the federal ones under California. And I just want to make sure from staff and the consultant that we are working on making sure that all of these groups are included in our housing element process and our outreach. So it's a question. Thanks. Luke?
Yes, no, I think you described it very accurately, Councilmember Moore, that yeah, everything in the federal standard is included in the state, and the state goes beyond. So what we really need to do is focus on that state list and get those groups. And yes, we are, again, we've relied on having WVCS come on board to help with the focus group meetings, but I think we know we need to go beyond that and pull in as much as we can to reach out to all of the groups on the state list. And we are collaborating through the county, as Andy noted. We have conversations and are working with Baird and Driscoll, who is representing the county as well. So we are having those conversations. And again, if there's any particular agency or group, I recognize there are a lot of service providers out there. If there is anybody that the committee feels we are not reaching out to and should be, I'd be happy to do that. If that's an exercise where you want to have a more exhaustive list of groups presented to the committee, we could get a list of county-based organizations and provide that at a future meeting. But my biggest concern is just if we're feeling like we're deficient in some area of outreach, to please let us know so we can address that.
Thank you, Luke. I see that Pew also has her hand raised. I just want to make sure, because some of these groups I'm not entirely, when I read this protected classes characteristics list, I'm not entirely sure what they mean when they say source of income. So I leave it to staff and the consultant to understand what they mean by that. And for genetic information, I'm not quite sure what they're meaning about that. So I leave it to you to provide some leadership on that. And age for people over 40. There's probably some overlap with some of these groups as well, I would think. And so, Pew, what?
So I just did want to mention that there is a lot of outreach that is happening at the county levels through coordination through Baird and Driscoll as well. So I did want to assure the committee that we are reaching out to all the groups that we know. They may not be necessarily one-on-one touches with these groups, but a lot of these groups are also getting burnt out by contact from different agencies and cities, because there are 109 housing elements being prepared right now. So in terms of them outreaching specifically to one city or another, we're trying to make sure that we hear from them about what their concerns are and not necessarily burning them out, so we don't even hear from them at all. So I did want to put that out there as well.
Okay, thank you. So there was another question from the public, from Siobhani, regarding how to find the recordings, and could staff point us and the public into that direction, because these are that's part of our meeting minutes, being action minutes, was that the recordings are all available online. So could someone
I can try to address that. I do believe that the first 4 meetings, or the first 3 meetings, are online at the Engage Cupertino website. The last meeting is still being processed by the video team, and once that's available, we will post it again to the Engage Cupertino website. And in addition, I did notice that they are not on our Legistar website. Usually they aren't, because this is a committee meeting. Usually they are not recorded and noted on the Legistar side, but we will update that on the Legistar side as well, because these are available.
Okay, thank you, Pew. Will they be on YouTube then, also on the YouTube City channel?
I believe they already are.
Okay, because I thought they had made it there. Okay, great. And I believe next hand raised from the committee members was from the vice chair of this committee, Tessa Parrish.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I just have some questions I've been writing down. I'm not quite sure about the meeting in the box that was referred to from Vice Mayor Chow. Was that just anybody's ability to put together a meeting, a focus group? Could someone define that? 2, I looked at the different questions in the element in the housing website and during the meeting, and I was having a hard time getting specific wants from the public of what they're looking for in housing. So the survey question that was of interest to me, that I know it's not going to be brought to us by Planning Manager Ghosh mentioning that they're not intending to bring it to us. But I think the concern from me about the questions is, how are we going to, we're asking these groups, a focus group, to be involved. What are we asking them, other than where would you like to see it with the housing on the website? You have the simulator, where would you like it to be? But someone actually asked me, you know, the parking is an issue for some. And I was discussing it with someone that why is it that in a lower income neighborhood, you'll see 5 cars, no parking. That's a huge want and need. And you kind of, are we asking the questions that bring us those answers? Well, I happen to know a few of them. As I mentioned before, I worked at a community center, and was in touch with quite a few of the community that have those 5 cars in their house. They have children that are working that need to work and or renting out rooms. And a lot of them have to work in the evenings. They take the jobs that are working at nights. And a lot of them are, the dad goes off to work, the mom has to drive the kids to school, so she needs a car unless she's going to pay for Uber every time. That gets very expensive. I could go on and on. My concern is, do we have a set of questions that reach out to the different groups, the lower and including the moderate, that happens to be one of the largest groups above moderate income. Well, West Valley is a good group that includes a section. I am concerned about the reaching out to the above moderate or all the other ones in the gap. So the questions are really important to me, whether they be shared. For example, if I want to put together a group from the West San Jose, from that community center, I could probably get about 20 from that area, the Saratoga, West San Jose, that do interact with Cupertino. Some of them even live in the east side of Cupertino. And so I would like to see that more engagement in the faith groups. Another concern I had was who was in charge of the email list. During the first meeting or second meeting, it was mentioned that all these faith groups and all the groups got an email. Yet I contacted someone that is in charge of receiving emails from Better Cupertino, and they did not receive that email. In fact, they said, who should we have gotten it from? And who do we need to contact, because we did not get that. So I'd like to talk to whoever and verify what emails do you have. If you didn't get a response, are you calling them up to see if they got it? What's, of the 1,500 emails, how many are responding back? Is it a good list is my question. The other is the fair housing. As Vice Mayor Chow had mentioned, the different groups that need to be included. My concern during the last May 23rd meeting was I didn't see any of the questions that would say who attended. Were they, different ethnicities? How are we going to prove to the fair housing? Is there a form we have to fill out? What does it entail? Do we have that going forward that's going to prove to them that we are reaching out to the right groups? The West Valley contract, I had seen it, whether or not, while I appreciate, and I definitely want them to be compensated, the individuals sharing their stories, I'd like to see more like, okay, I share your stories, but what would you like to see? These questions that lead us to getting their needs and wants, not just the stories that they have. Like that group I'm mentioning that I may be able to get together. What do I ask them? And I wouldn't expect to compensate them because they're going to benefit from it. I would reach out to them saying, this is going to benefit you in having better housing for the future and your children. Would you like to participate? And that's how I would approach it. This is a give and take. We're helping each other. I would think we were not going to compensate everybody doing that. But just a thought on that. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice Chair. And would staff like to respond to Tessa's questions, beginning with I believe the meeting in the box question, to provide us a little more information about that. And then the questions about the lower, moderate, and above moderate income categories. Are we going to have specific questions for them? And there was a question about the email list, and making sure that all the groups received an email. And I am also concerned with HCD. How do we prove that we've reached out to all of these groups? How is that being tracked? Thank you.
I can start, and I welcome my team to jump in, of course, including staff and city attorney. For the surveys, just starting off with the meeting in a box. I just had an idea based on what I heard from you, Vice Chair Parrish, that we could have a toolkit of survey questions so that each person who wants to lead these meetings, you can select out which questions you want to incorporate in your meeting. So that's an idea I'd love to hear feedback on. Because the most important part is that the person leading these meetings feel connected with what you're asking of the group that you're with. And as long as we're fine with all of these questions, that narrative can be incorporated back into our reporting out. I heard you mention the question about making sure that we're addressing those who are in moderate income, not just very low and low. I do want to be clear that all three of those are considered affordable housing: very low, low, and moderate. Yes, and the theory is, of course, we want to hear from everyone. So when you ask about, are we making sure to include comments from those who are above moderate? Absolutely, we want to include everybody's voice. One of the things that's different about the sixth cycle housing element update from prior element updates is there's a real encouragement to include voices that have not been part of the conversation before. And I know you've heard that before. So the idea is that those who are above moderate income, they often have agency and knowledge and maybe even experience for how to have their voice heard. So there's all the channels available, but I don't know that we're going to include in our process something that is specifically maybe geared towards, specifically that voice as a sort of an exclusive opportunity for outreach. I appreciate you suggesting that we have more engagement with faith groups. That's right in line with what WBCS and EMC and staff were all geared towards. And to be clear about that also, that there's, and I think Kylie mentioned it earlier, that it's not only sharing with the leadership the opportunities that are available, but also sharing education so that it can be information that gets shared with each of those faith-based communities. So we, maybe aligned with this meeting in a box concept, that we can make sure to have flyers available or some easy talking points, something that could be easily led, because we're looking to increase our ambassadors for relaying the invitation to join the discussion. And as we're moving forward with our site selection, it may well be that now that we're down to some specific sites, that's often a point in time where people feel like they can step in and begin to get more deeply engaged, because you're talking about something that's more solid. It's a specific site that we're asking for feedback on, instead of asking which neighborhoods do you think this should go. So we anticipate getting more participation as we go forward. And I hear your question about not just stories, but asking folks what kinds of solutions maybe that they might have, or ideas. And that's certainly the arc of the dialogue that we want to encourage, but not maybe not in such a structured way. In other words, it's by understanding and listening deeply to hear about somebody's need. We did hear at the May 23rd some ideas for solution from their perspective, and that's the important piece. That's where the synthesizing happens. That's why it's so important for us to also hear people's response following that listening deeply, because that's where we catalyze and we get some really exciting new ideas. And so getting back to that point of how will HCD give us a thumbs up on our AFFH? And it's really through that magic. And that's why it's difficult to describe. And it's, the first round where this is the path for doing this. It's through that synergy. It's through that deep listening and then having aha moments about how specifically Cupertino can uniquely be responsive to the needs that we're hearing. When we have new ideas that spring forth from that deep listening, that's what HCD, when they hear it, they know that we've gone through the process and that we've come up with something that the city can commit to and that the community can benefit from. So it's not a bunch of check boxes, and we have to be very careful about that. We don't want to be necessarily looking at a list, and we want to be as inclusive as possible, and that's absolutely our focus. And as Luke has mentioned, we are absolutely open to hearing about new groups that we maybe hadn't considered as part of our list. And as far as a list, I do want to remind everybody that Kylie had a fantastic list earlier on at our last meeting, where we were very descriptive about groups that we're grateful that WVCS has used their social capital to reach out to, because when somebody receives, when a community-based organization receives an email directly from WVCS, they're going to listen in a different way than just EMC sending them an email or even the city sending them an email. So we're trying to build upon the structures that are, and as Pew had mentioned, we also want to be very conscientious and respectful of those leaders, so that we're able to just really in a conscientious way and in a very scripted way ask the questions that we need answered, or that the participation that we want, so that we're not overwhelming them with our requests. So I hope that touched on most of the points. I'm happy to continue if it's helpful.
Can I add something onto that? Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of the advice y'all have been giving has been really helpful for the outreach, like Vice Mayor Chow at a meeting or two before, you talked about not just reaching out to the superintendent, but asking the superintendent to disperse emails throughout. And so I went and after that meeting, emailed each of those sorts of leaders, including language that they can send out to their networks. And so I think I really appreciate feedback like that. And it's definitely something that we're working on. And just in terms of Better Cupertino, so maybe this is something worth looking into, because I went and researched, and on their website, the email it said to reach out to was contact@bettercupertino.org. And so that was who we sent an email to. But I do just want to confirm, like, we at least tried to include them, and I think really as many groups as we could think of. And I've heard a few of you now bring up making sure that we're hitting all of those protected classes. And I think that that's a really good point, looking at the attendees and not just the panelists. And so hopefully we'll be able to capture some of that from the moderators' notes, because I know they said that a lot of people with lived experience were in their rooms, but I also do think that in the future, we can be a little more specific about asking people how they identify, which of those classes they might feel like they fall into, and things like that.
Thank you, Kylie and Andy. And I don't know if this has been brought up. Prior to the pandemic, we had the first LGBTQ listening forum in Community Hall, and I was wondering if we have some outreach already done to BAMEC. So if not, I think that would be a really good idea. And next we have the Planning Commission Chair Scharf.
Hi, thank you, Chair Moore. So let me go to my list here. So that's the community meeting on May 23rd. I was looking at that slide when it was up, and I just wonder if some of the questions that were asked are easy to answer, but whoever was putting it on may have not known actually some of those answers. Like, I believe we do have one tenant on the Housing Commission now. I believe that was when I was on council, I did vote for that person. Specific, and one reason was because we wanted a mix of owners and renters on the Housing Commission. There was another question about eliminating fees for affordable housing. So right now, in Cupertino, we do have mitigation fees for affordable housing, just like any housing, but they are deposited into the BMR Affordable Housing Fund, which can only be used for the provision of more affordable housing in Cupertino. I also saw someone saying that we should remove the height restrictions, and hopefully they understand that taller does not necessarily mean more affordable. In fact, it's generally the opposite, because it's much more expensive to construct the taller housing. And then I didn't see, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anyone bring up the need for actual funding of affordable housing. I don't know if anyone saw that San Francisco recently stated that they need about $11.5 billion to build the affordable housing that is in their arena. And they said, well, we don't have any idea where we're going to get that money. And, we're a little more fortunate in Cupertino. We have so many pipeline units from the 5th cycle arena that will roll over into 6th cycle. And those units are mostly based on our inclusionary housing requirements, but that kind of funding is not so possible anymore because of construction costs, and because the market rate units are often not sufficiently profitable to pay for the BMR, to subsidize the BMR units. So we definitely will need other funding, and hopefully that will come, much of it from the state surplus. But of course, even that enormous surplus could not nearly fund all the affordable housing for all the cities' arenas. It would not be nearly enough. And then I was wondering, in the survey questions, I tried to look at other city surveys on AFFH. Unfortunately, most of the surveys are already closed because those cities are a lot further ahead than us. But I saw the questions for the Sacramento AFFH survey, which they included in the survey results. And they only had 4 questions. So I don't know, I hope that our survey is not overly long so that more people will participate. And of course, EMC can go look at that Sacramento survey. It's online, the results. And then I agree with Vice Chair Parrish regarding the issue of parking. Now, under state law, we can parking requirements can already be waived for housing along bus routes with a sufficient headway. But as Vice Chair Parrish pointed out, a lack of parking especially impacts low-income residents that require a vehicle to get to their jobs and are unable to remote work, or they work at night. So I'd like to see in our survey definitely a question about commuting, how people commute, and correlate it to different income levels. Since if you're an engineer or a lawyer or an attorney, you can probably work from home much of the time. But if you work in a automobile factory like Tesla, or work for an electronics assembly contractor, you probably cannot work from home, and you really are dependent on a vehicle to get to work, because we all know the state of mass transit in Silicon Valley. Especially if you're working one of the night shifts. And then in terms of outreach, one place that might be good, and we would get a lot of non-Cupertino residents as well, and we just missed one last Saturday, is the De Anza Flea Market, which started back up in May. So that's always the first Saturday of the month. So the next one will be whatever the first Saturday of July is. And that would be a great place to have a booth to be able to reach out to non-Cupertino residents. And then I believe one of the public did mention housing is a human right. I don't think she was referring to the organization, but I think that is a great organization to reach out to. They've been extremely active at the state level in opposing anti-affordable housing legislation. They urged Governor Newsom to veto SB 9 and SB 10, which didn't happen, unfortunately, but they've been very active in opposing legislation that would increase displacement and gentrification, like SB 50 and SB 827, which were defeated. And I mean, I greatly respect that organization. They're not funded by real estate interests. They're not funded by big tech. And I think they are very worthwhile to reach out to. And I just think we have to be very careful about not going down the road of listening to groups that have vested financial interests in worsening the affordable housing crisis. So I would urge that be one of the groups we reach out to. Housing is a human right. And I think that's all I have. So if they could answer, someone could answer some of those, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Commission Chair Scharf. And would staff like to address the questions and comments?
I could try a lot of what I just heard from Commissioner Scharf. A lot of them were more statements rather than questions, was how I took the.
Well, I mean, like the outreach at De Anza Flea Market and the outreach to housing is a human right. I mean, can we at least do both of those?
Yes, I will commit to doing both. I was unaware of the De Anza Flea Market. I think that's a good opportunity for us to attend that. So if that's monthly, we can look at the dates coming up. And also the specific organization, Housing is a Human Right. I'd be happy to get them on a contact list and include them in our outreach this month.
Okay, and also if one of our survey questions, if it's appropriate, can it be on how people commute and correlate that to their income? Because I know there's been a lot of discussion, well, let's just build all the housing on the 23 bus line and then no one will need a car. And I think that's, it's a naive idea based on how lower income people need to get to work. So I hope that can be somehow worked into the survey.
Yeah, well, I think we heard you on the parking issue as well as commuting patterns, and to include that in the survey for housing. I think also one of the things Andy mentioned when we were looking at the third focus group meeting, where he had cited the sort of house poor designation, which came up at the May 23 meeting, is also trying to look at the service workers and others in the community who probably are doing a lot of the long commutes, and to include them in that focus group meeting, the people who work in Cupertino and are having those long drives, to try to get them involved. So in addition to the survey, I think that's another opportunity to talk to people who are sort of in that category, where you're correct. They're dependent on a car despite their income level.
Right.
And often have the service jobs that don't allow them to telecommute or anything like that. So I think that's a very good group for Cupertino and a lot of the West Santa Clara County cities to be talking to.
So would it be appropriate to have a question asking people how they believe affordable housing should be funded? Or is that outside the scope of AFFH or what?
I can try to answer that. I think that is a little bit outside of the housing element scope, only because we have to zone for what we're required to zone for. And how we fund it, it doesn't necessarily mean the city has to fund it. We just have to create the opportunities for that housing to be built. And so it goes a little bit beyond that, and asking that question might open the door to other things that I don't know that the city wants to commit itself to.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you, Pew. And I think that reminds all of us about the jobs homeless program that we have. When the county is given the lion's share of the property tax, they were supposed to be providing services, and we have now taken upon ourselves committed the 200,000 for the 2 individuals, and we're looking at it again as an extension in our budget, where there's we can kind of look at the county needing to provide services for the community, and they've committed to this task force, but we haven't seen something locally provided by them. And then you can expand that to the state having this giant surplus. And are they going to be helping us, or are we going to be taking it on when they're not actually providing the services and funding that they're supposed to? It's a really good question. And Deuce, going back to, there's another hand raised somewhere. Pew.
I did want to respond to Chair Sharf's questions about parking and the question that you wish to ask in the survey. I will note that we did have a very large project, approved in Cupertino, and they were required to provide no parking. They were along the 23 bus line, and despite that, they did end up providing close to about 8,900 parking stalls. So I will say, and then we also had our 100% affordable housing at the verandas also, which were 19 units, and they were only required to provide, I believe, like 0.5 parking spaces per unit, and they went above and beyond what the requirement was, even though honestly they are currently they're overparked with what they provided, but they still did provide 1 parking space per unit. However, so I don't think that necessarily everybody wants to build without parking. I do believe that they want to right size the parking, and I'm not making any judgments about what that number is.
No, I agree that, most property owners, if they actually want to rent or lease out, whether it be retail or housing, whatever, I mean, they wouldn't be foolish enough to not include sufficient parking. But I think having a question on that would just maybe reinforce the fact that, it's the lower income people in the affordable housing that almost need the parking more than the higher income people in the market rate. So yeah, I do appreciate that, most of the property owners would not underpark, even if they legally could do that.
Okay, so with regards to the large project that provided parking but has a deficit, that would, I'm going to assume that's the Valco project. The problem there, and it may be that they did a cost analysis because they were originally going to have 3 levels of underground parking, well, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing level on the east side, and then they had 2 levels underground on the west side, and they dropped it, decreased the amount, and now there's only 1 level underground on the west side and 2 on the east side, to my knowledge. They're saving a lot of money essentially by doing that because of the excavation cost, and then having to find a location for the soil. Because they originally had almost 2 million cubic yards of soil excavation needing to be located. So there is another side to it. And also and I'm worried about this, that project's causing at least a 3,410 residential unit deficit because of the large office component. And I don't know how that's going to be communicated in our housing element to HCD. But if you take the 4,588, I believe is our starting point, you subtract off the 2,402 from the Valco project, and we're still needing to locate, I also taking off the 600 for the Irvine Company's Hamptons, I'm at 1,586, except the Valco project's causing a 3,410 deficit. So even if we did provide all of this 4,588, we're still what, 2,000 units short, and our housing element is going to cause us a 2,000 residential unit negative, actually, because of that Valco project. So I hope that's being communicated, that the housing law utilized is that this is the net effect of it, that even if we put the 4588 around the city, that we're still negative. And I think that's important. It's a very odd process that we are working on. Okay, I see the Vice Mayor has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So I have another legal requirement I hope to share. But first, I have some comment in response to other people's comment. Pop-up booth is another idea that's mentioned by the San Mateo Collaborative. So, but it's not like a desk and sitting there asking, do you want to learn about housing element? I think it's more like you have a short survey. You have people out with clipboard asking people to answer some questions. That kind of pop up. I think we can do that in farmers market, flea market, or any kind of time we have these summer activities. So that's another great outreach. And I think the lack of parking, like Councilmember Moore said, Valco will actually create a few thousand more demand on parking spaces on neighborhood. So they are going to have overflow parking in the neighborhood. And what I just watched a video by Stanford researcher about homeless policies. And they are examining the housing first policy that Governor Newsom adopted in 2004. And after 10 years, they find out that's actually making the situation worse. And then shelter first, housing earned probably is a better idea. But then one person said that if we make policy based on feelings, it will take years to realize our mistake, and then the damage is very hard to be undone. So it's important we base policies on evidence, not on feelings. And regarding the BMR fee, I believe the public is asking to waive the application fee, right? So I wonder, do we ask people to pay application fee for applying for BMR? I think that should be waived if we do. So that's, I think the staff can answer later. And I want to clarify that the federal protected characteristics, it didn't say low income is the highest priority. The fact is there are domestic violence victims who are at high income level, and often they don't know where to turn to because there are a lot of agencies helping low income people, but for middle and high income people, they don't know where to turn to. So therefore, this characteristics is based on many items. Not one of them is more important than the other. We should not make this assumption so that we might be mistakenly not looking at the whole picture. So I hope that we are careful about that. And then I think, yeah, thank you, Kylie, that you mentioned that we will collect attendee information. I think that's important. And I think also, I hope, rather than just coming up with groups, I think I agree that these groups are all probably tired of being reached out to. Why don't we leverage the county resource? If they have done those outreach, like San Jose, contract with them to get the comments. Maybe all this organization already provided to the county or to San Jose, then why can't we just use their data? I think we do that for the federal fair housing assessment. So can we do that for the housing element too? And then finally is the thing I want to share. It's a government code regarding RENA assessment. It has a list of items on how we want to do the assessment, and this is government code 65584E9. It says the housing needs generated. So it should include the housing needs generated by the presence of private university or a campus of CSU, UC within any member jurisdiction. What's missing here is community college. There is currently no state law providing housing at the community college campuses, and the RENA assessment did not take into account of community college students. I think maybe the state law is designed assuming community college, since it's funded by district, the students are supposed to come from the district and live in their homes. They are not expected to need housing. So when students choose voluntarily to go out of district to attend another community college, that kind of impact is not part of this housing element assessment. So I think yes, it's important to engage young people to hear from the college students. However, as part of our outreach, when we have very, very limited resource, I think we should not use the only 3 community meetings to engage the students. And most of them who have written to us are students who don't live in the district. Already we are using the district resource to fund their education. They want us now to also house them. They should probably advocate to the legislators to change the role of community college in that case. And that's not the scope of this housing element. I think if we do the ambassador program, kid in a box, an ambassador can go out and collect their input. But when we have only 3 community meetings, we should be sure that these 3 meetings will include members that are essential for AFFH, such as the service providers, caretakers, who are providing a lot of services for Cupertino residents. I think those are essential.
Vice Mayor,
So, yeah.
we're coming up on
Okay.
the hour. I actually think you brought
But
up.
that's the end of my comments. So
Okay.
I want to see that for the second community meeting, we should talk about what date it is and who should be the panelists, or should we even have a panel? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor. You actually bring up something that I think is kind of in the legal realm, and I was hoping that our city attorney could weigh in on that. And if you have some comments, Chris, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, so I think what the Vice Mayor was referring to were some of the mandatory criteria that HCD needs to look at in setting the RENA allocation for cities. And it does, she pointed out, it does specifically mention UC, Cal State and UC campuses. It does not mention community colleges. That may be that may be because there's an assumption that most community college students live at or near home. I think that the net upshot of that is probably that the housing needs of De Anza College were not necessarily considered, or may not have been considered in setting the RENA allocation. I don't know the answer to that as a question of fact as to how the process worked, but that would be potential legal implication of that.
Okay, thank you. And if we are having the De Anza students invited, I think perhaps if we could have someone from the board, perhaps Patrick Ahrens, president, would want to speak. And we did pass a $890 million bond, so they do have quite a significant amount of funding, and I would like to hear what they have to say about it, because there was a question a couple of years ago brought up about whether or not they could or would provide housing on their campus, and it would probably be a good time for the board president to talk about that, why they would or wouldn't be providing that. And Andy, your hand's raised.
Thank you. I just want to make the point that dorm housing does not count towards RENA.
Yeah, that's true.
Dormitory housing would not be counted towards RENA, but enabling the possibility for a unit that would make sense to a college student would certainly count towards it. So smaller units, maybe in the case of students, this would be a population group that would not need parking, that would otherwise benefit from having a more localized, higher density to offset that parking in close proximity to the college. So there can be opportunities to enable housing intended for students without it being dormitory housing, so that it could also count towards the RHNA number.
Thank you, Andy. And that sounds like some sort of potential for rezoning around the school district. The college district. Planning Commission Chair Scharf.
Oh, yeah, I'll be brief. So I can't say very much, but I know in talking to a developer, there are efforts underway by De Anza College to determine how they spend some of that bond money. Not really for student housing, more for teacher housing, but I was sworn to not talk about it in any detail so far, but I think having Patrick would be a great idea because yeah, he could probably reveal some of the stuff that's going on.
Great. All right, thank you. Vice Chair Parrish.
So following on Vice Mayor Chow's request, is there a place that we have an updated plan of what's so far in the plan for this whole process, somewhere posted that I could check out? What's planned?
Andy?
Well, it was listed in your staff report in the memo today, all of the upcoming opportunities for outreach specific to AFFH. And some of them, like even with this meeting number 2 coming up, I would like to have guidance. We have only 3 minutes here, but I just heard from Vice Mayor Chow that there is not support for the focus that we were bringing forward to you today, which is to have a focus on working with the De Anza students. And I do want to bring up the point that there are intersectionalities. Yes, they may be students, but even if that's not a group that you necessarily want to highlight as part of your AFFH outreach, what we see is that there's an intention to be a part of the dialogue, and I think we can read through their comments that there are intersectionalities, meaning that they often meet a number of the characteristics for AFFH, and they are students. So I want to get clear guidance before we go further down our process of designing for this community meeting number 2.
Okay, thank you, Andy. That's a really good point. I do want to bring up also that the college does not just serve the 18 to 21-year-old demographic. I'm a student. I've been a student there for many, many years. Okay, Vice Mayor, would you like to clarify?
Oh, I think for the next meeting, maybe it's a good idea to invite a college board member so we know their plan. Informally, I heard there's no intention to build on their campus, but they would like you to use the bond money to purchase properties that someone else can help them build. So they are interested if we identify any site that they could purchase. And maybe we can zone in a way that work with them. So I think we should really work closely with them on that. And for the next meeting, I think college board member, employee union president or leaders. I think especially like, for example, Cupertino Union has 3 employee union. There's, besides teacher, you have I think the teacher's aide, and I think the Cupertino City also has employee union, right? So if we hear from, and even De Anza College employee union, so maybe those, because these employees are, I think we need to house first, right? So maybe we should hear from employee union leaders and the board president from college, their plan. That might be valuable information. And then I think our focus should not be hearing from the panelists. I think the focus of the community meeting should really be hearing from the attendees and then collect all that information.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. And it is actually 1 o'clock now. We are running over. And so I see Pew, your hand's raised. I'm hoping staff could help give us some direction to close out this particular item and get our next steps. Thank you.
So thank you, Chair Moore. Staff continues to feel like the focus of the second meeting should be the education and the senior groups, only because call it what you may, Cupertino is a victim of its great education system, whether it be its elementary, middle school, and high school system, or its community college system. We do get people from quite far away that come to our community college because it is such a great college. And yes, it is not included in the RENA, but however, you know, for good or bad, these students do need to be housed if that is their desire. I mean, if this is where they wish to live and be comfortable. But that is our recommendation to this committee, that we do reach out, we do our outreach to that community with our second meeting. And so, I mean, that's what I wanted to close with. And I think it would probably be best to
Can I
get
make a
from
motion,
the
please?
committee, yes, to move forward with that. Otherwise, that meeting is going to be delayed, and we're going to have to now figure out what we do next. And that just delays our draft housing element yet again.
So
Thank
I
you.
would like to make a motion.
Hold on a second, Vice Mayor. I want to hear from Kylie. Her hand also went up on this item.
So real quick, just a few things on that. I definitely want to second what Pew said. Like, it would push back the timeline, especially if we don't leave here with committee direction. And so I would prefer to stick with the idea of youth and seniors. And one thing I want to point out is a lot of students do also work here and they're not able to live here. And so we'd capture a lot of that audience. And I think also something I think is really important is capturing the different experiences of seniors and youth. And so if we're able to bring them together, like, that's why we ended up focusing on students, is the Danza population is largely youth, and we can also include high school students in this, because something I hear a lot from the parents is that they're worried their kid won't be able to live here when they come back from college and things like that. So I think it's better to stick with it. And I think that what I just said might give more clarification on how it could work.
And if I may just add that Kylie and I, thank you, Chair. Kylie and I have designed for this next meeting to have a longer period of time within the breakout sessions. That is something that we've heard that people have enjoyed and gotten a lot out of that piece of it. So what you're suggesting has already been incorporated into the design of our process. But we do find that having a panelist initiate the conversation and having that responsiveness throughout is something that's beneficial. But we are tipping the scales and having it be more time with the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Andy. Do you have a date for this meeting?
We were trying really hard to have it be last week of June, but that's just not working out for the full team. So right now we're anticipating mid-July, hopefully the sometime in that week of the 12th to 15th, or possibly between the 19th and the 22nd. We are intending it to be a day other than Monday, because it's important for us to skip around and have different days so that different people can participate, and to not have that lockout.
Who is it not working out for to have it in June?
Oh, the full team members. So we don't.
Full team member.
Specifically who?
It depends on each day. I could tell you 3 different people that aren't able to commit to it, who are essential to the coming together of the meeting. So it's, and then we have the 4th of July weekend, which means that a lot of people are on vacation that week. So, and it takes time to organize these. So we're planning for another successful meeting in mid-July. And we'd like to have that 3rd meeting come on its heels as quickly as possible. What's essential right now is we focus also, we've also got June 28th. That's certainly not a night that the meeting could have occurred, because we have our planning commission meeting, and I hope anybody listening will attend. that'll be great. And once we get this list confirmed by council, then we can move forward with our CEQA process. So it's a 2-track system. Meanwhile, we're also attending to our outreach.
Andy, quick question on the 28th. You're saying it's going to the Planning Commission or is it going to the City Council?
It's going to the Planning Commission. Thank you for that clarification.
All right. And is there any possibility that could be a joint Planning Commission and Council meeting? I'm a little concerned that Council, because we haven't seen it, we're going to have a full, complete packaged set of sites without really knowing how it was arrived at.
I'll leave that to staff.
Okay, please consider that. All right, and I'm going to go back to the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I thought it will come to the council mid-June, and now it's not even June, it will be July. That's really, 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 really late. And I am disappointed that it seems the staff come to this committee with a set idea and then always tell us, oh, we don't have time to change it. Then what's this purpose of having this committee? I think we are looking at 1.5 months. And then if that's not enough time, why don't you present all 3 community meetings in the last meeting so we can provide input then? So it feels like you are not really timing this properly. So the idea of inviting a board member is many of the Anza College students would attend as attendees. So that's including them already. If you include the employee union leaders, many employee union members will be attendees so that then we can actually engage that entire union. We need to house mainly, I think, the employees, yes, the student, but community college students are mostly supposed to attend the college in their own community. If they choose to come here, they want to influence our housing policy, great for them to provide input, but they should not be an essential component of our housing element. So I think it's very important we invite the college board member, employee union of education institutes, COSD employee union, Diana College employee union, Fremont Union employee union. This way, yeah, like you said, we want to focus on education. Great.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I believe that input has been made well to Andy. So the request now from, I think all of us, it's unanimous, I believe, to bring in a board member from the De Anza College and the employee union members as well. So we are not great. We're not saying don't do the outreach to De Anza and just thinking these students are going to, it's a 2 years college. They're going to very shortly be, if they are not already, be probably moderate income or wage earners looking for a place to live and wanting to work in Cupertino. They went to school here. They may want to have jobs here. So there is a very short timeline where they're going to be out in the job market fully looking for housing. So there we can kind of turn the little puzzle around a little bit and look at them not just as being De Anza students, but their future employees.
Yeah, they can be attendees, right?
Yes.
They shouldn't be the focus. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And we have Vice Chair Parrish.
Very quickly. So just, I'd mentioned one time utilizing perhaps the Chamber of Commerce to get the word out of a survey and pass out a survey requesting their businesses and then they distribute it to the employees. Would that be an expedited method of getting feedback from our current existing employees that want to live here in Cupertino? And then the plan I was referring to is I understand that we have the next 3 meetings or that was in the packet today. I was referring more so to the general plan, like what the other outreach, the general plan that Vice Mayor said we we're supposed to provide to the council, and with a timeline of when we're going to submit what products, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Parrish. I want to mention first, with regards to the listings of businesses, the city has a business license list of over 2,400 businesses already set up in a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, ready to go if you need that resource, and that should probably be put online for the community. In general, that we should have our listing of the business license made public. With regards to the other question on the timeline, Andy, could you provide the answer for that? Also, our presentation materials, your presentation materials, if they could be put on the website for today, all the slide deck that you had was a little bit different from the packet, the way the material was presented. Same material, I'm just saying it shows up differently and there, so it might help people to have a little shorter package there to read. That would be great. And so I'm hoping to wrap up on this agenda item quickly. So if you could respond on the timeline, that would help.
Sure. The timeline, as we've discussed many times, is collaborative. So we thought we were done with the Planning Commission and moving on to council with our sites. And yet now we've had an extra meeting and now we'll have another. But the good news is we're moving the process along and having it be as informed as possible for council. So whether or not council can join us at that 28th meeting, we are moving forward. But the timeline continually is affected by several variables, and we can give our best guess timeline for moving forward, and then, well, it all depends on decision maker decisions as we go forward. So we can have a draft schedule along with our contract amendment for meetings such as the SACs that have carried us out of scope. That's our goal for the month of July, once council is complete with your budget, because we understand that takes a lot of time and energy.
All right, thank you, Andy. Vice Mayor, do you have a burning question or comment? Unmute. There we go.
So if it's simply impossible to change the second community meeting, then the focus for this meeting should have been the third one. What's the list, and then the committee can provide input for the third one. So what's the third one? Remind me again.
That was our request today. That was our one request of the committee, to please give us feedback about whom we may include for the third meeting, in addition to our initial ideas. Kylie, can you help me out with that?
What are the initial ideas?
Yeah, let me just jump in, Andy. I think for the third meeting, we were looking at, again, the sort of the house poor people that are residents that have a house that's high value, but not necessarily high income people. So your one asset is your home. And I think the second group we were looking at for the third meeting were service workers and people who, as Commissioner Scharf alluded to, a lot of the people doing the long commutes who don't have the option to telecommute, that work in Cupertino but don't live in Cupertino. Those were the two groups we were thinking for the third meeting. So if there's any additional input, or some of the groups you mentioned today could be folded into that third meeting, so we could stick to the focus of the second meeting being seniors and students, that may be a way to expedite this.
So yeah, then that means actually then the third meeting we can include the employee unions. And then I think the second meeting we should include the college board member. And then I agree with Council Member Moore that college students are transient. I think a lot of them are looking into transferring to UC after 2 years. So their housing situation is different than a general one. So, well, But anyway, if that's already arranged, but maybe employees unions for the third one, but please invite a board member who can speak about the bond major in the second meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm actually wondering if we could have a meeting at the end of June, this committee meeting on perhaps the June 27th at 11 a.m. if that could work. And then we could add some more comments to the third meeting. And since we're supposed to be looking at this meeting in a box and the surveys, if we could get some feedback on what we can be doing as committee and council members for providing some outreach as well. We need to get that information. You had some potential questions that we could have kind of to have a discussion and get how to get feedback since there's going to be some continuing updates to the website, if we could have those brought to us so that we know what's changed. I saw some changes from May 25th. If we could have an introduction to that so that we can lead people through the website and that could help. So that goes into the future agenda setting. So I'm wondering if we can just continue on this discussion with regards to who will be invited to the third meeting, if you'll have enough advance time, if we're able to in the next item have a meeting in late June. Will that work? So Vice Mayor, I see your hand still raised. I'm hoping to close out too and then move on.
I think we did not also get an answer on the pop-up booth either at a flea market or farmers market. So would that be considered? Maybe that should be on the next meeting's agenda.
I believe, Vice Mayor, I believe Luke made a commitment to the first flea market Saturday, July.
How about farmers market? I think we have more residents. They have like over 8,000 people a day.
If I may.
I heard, yeah.
Yes, Pierre.
Chair, I heard Luke commit to looking at the dates for the flea market and then deciding which one works. It is on a weekend, so I do want to give him a little bit of difference because it is going to be on a Sunday or a Saturday. So whether that's in July or in August, if we can have that leeway in terms of the farmers market, we can look to see how we can attend those meetings. Again, our attendance at the farmers market means that we're away from our desks in terms of getting work done as well. So I don't know that we can continue on an ongoing basis, commit to doing this throughout the period from now until we have a draft housing element. However,
okay. Let me stop both of you just for a moment. Okay, because we're actually
getting volunteers to staff the pop-up booth. Similar to the kid in a box.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. But we're getting into, I think, our future agenda setting and the outreach. So we've provided the guidance. We'd like to have it happen. It's up to staff to figure out when it's going to happen. And Kylie, do you have a comment with regards to the agenda item, or can we close it out and move on to future agenda setting?
Yeah, just a comment for the next meeting. I think to have enough time for a mid-July meeting, it would need to take place the week of the 20th at the latest, because I do want to make sure we can incorporate feedback and that these meetings aren't just us reporting to y'all.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And with that,
through the chair, can I,
yes.
Very important comment. So for the next community meeting, it's important always we use this meeting to provide audience facts about the law we need to abide to. If HH should reach out to this protected class and the RENA assessment did not include the housing needs of community college students, that should be pointed out, because if the college students feel they need to be housed, they should advocate to the proper entity, which are the legislators. So I think that they should know that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And with that, we have completed item 2. Do we have any staff and committee reports?
No, we do not.
Okay, then we move on to future agenda setting. And right now it's looking like the week of the 20th would be the wisest choice at this point. Do we have availability on Monday, the 20th at 11 a.m.? Yes, got one thumbs up. I'm giving a thumbs up. Planning Commission Chair Scharf, yes, okay. I need one more to make quorum.
27th, we have legislative review committee meeting, right?
Well, we're looking at the 20th at 11 a.m., which is
20th.
Monday, yes.
Oh, 20th.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
June
that's-
20th, 11 a.m. Are you able to make that, Vice Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. And we have Luke, Andy, Stephen, myself, Vice Mayor, Vice Chair. Yes, I got a thumbs up. Okay, so we have set our next agenda. We have just mentioned the items which we want to be discussing on it. So I'll leave that to staff to capture.
Kylie Clark still has her hand up. I don't know if
Kylie.
that's
Thank
on the
you. Sorry,
floor or
quick
what.
comment. So I believe that Monday is a national holiday for Juneteenth, which I don't know if that affects your meeting schedule. It does affect whether I might be able to be here. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Well, they're observing the Juneteenth on the 20th.
Yeah.
Good point. Is staff working that day? Is it off?
It is not a holiday for us here at Cupertino.
Okay, so right now we can start with a mention at the beginning of the meeting with regards to the Juneteenth holiday, and then continue on. Alternatively, we can move it to we've got a city council meeting the next day. We could try to move it to June 22nd at 11. I got one no. How about June 23rd?
No, I'm available that day. It's just I hate pushing this out further and further.
I would
agree.
also add that we do have a planning commission meeting on the 28th for which packet gets pushed out about that time. And I don't want to take Andy's focus away from doing that if we can have the meeting earlier.
Okay, so the preference is that we will still have the meeting on June 20th at 11 a.m. That's the preference of the committee. Yes. Okay. All right. So we have the pop-up item to discuss as well. The surveys that we can provide, and meeting in a box, along with the third meeting, who will be attending at the third meeting, and that was the most important part for why we moved the meeting closer. And do we have any other items to put on this agenda from members of the committee?
So if we could have some sample surveys, so we have some idea what that looks like, because we could talk about questions to use for kid in a box meeting and pop-up booths and maybe different kind of surveys. So some simple survey question would help us to think about what kind of outreach we should have in different format.
Okay, and Pew?
I'm kind of mulling over that. That's a lot to get done in less than 2 weeks. And I don't think we'll be able to do that. I'm just being very honest about what I think we can get our arms around. We also have to get all our site lists done and present that to planning commission. So there is a lot of work that is already contemplated. The survey itself, I think we're not planning, at least we'll have to chat with EMC to see where those surveys are going to happen and what form that'll take. This is the first time that we've talked about a survey that does not pertain to just AFFH. So we'll have to discuss that before we can bring anything back. But I think the 20th would be too soon.
So the intent for the 20th is mainly for, I think the third meeting was the original intent to have one in June. So maybe we at least could have that item if the other items have not too much information. I think it's okay.
I think the meeting on the 20th will probably be a checkpoint meeting for how we're doing for the second meeting, really, with some ideas about what the third might look like. But I'm just trying to be realistic about what we can and cannot achieve.
Thank you, Pew. And I'd also mentioned if we could have a run through on what changes have happened to the website and the usefulness of the housing simulator to me has been kind of questionable because we have that large Valco project and the Hamptons on there, and I think that to explain, maybe do a little walkthrough for that simulator could be helpful, where you instruct us how it works. And then what do we do when we already know that you've got almost 3,000 or about 3,000 units are already placed? That would
I'm sure EMC can do that in their sleep.
Oh, yeah. I think a review of the website would be really useful. I think we can maybe provide input on help improve it. We're only in the middle of the process, right? If we improve, we can still make it
We can certainly point out what's been updated for sure.
Yeah.
excellent. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Any other comments from the committee? Hearing none.
So just awesome. Thank you for everyone for this all the information you are providing. It's getting better and better on the plan. So yeah, thank you for all your hard work. Although I could sometimes be pushing a lot. Yeah, but really appreciate all your work.
I think, Vice Mayor, everyone really appreciates your passion and how much you've dug into the process. It's very motivating. All right. Oh, and with that, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see everyone on June 20th at 11 a.m. All right.